I was born and raised in Niagara Falls, New York. For many people who hear about that city, that was one of those cities that was a vacation site that people often came to. But for us, we lived on the other side of town. That was the inner city aspects of it. And I was born and raised there in a little projects called Jordan Gardens. My mother and my father, Francis and Lodi Betton, they had 7 children together, and I was the middle child. And so my father, he was never around, and that was a very difficult thing for me to process as a young man, as well as even today. But my mother did a marvelous job of raising my brothers and my sisters, being a quote-unquote single parent at the time. But she made sure that we had all that we needed. She made sure that she provided for us the best that she could. And so growing up in that projects, it was challenging many times. But I knew that it was something that I could not allow myself to be entrapped by, growing up in the projects in that inner city. And so when I graduated from high school, I knew I had to make a decision on whether or not I was going to remain there in the city or I was going to do something with my life. I don't have that testimony as many preachers that I was born and raised in the church. That's just not fitting for me. Matter of fact, I really didn't start going to church until I joined the military. But not being born and raised in the church, really I was born on the streets, born and raised by the streets rather. And so did everything that young men did at that time as far as getting involved with that kind of lifestyle, what drugs were, and running the street, hanging out on the block, doing things you shouldn't do. And so consequently, I was not one of those individuals who really spent a lot of time academically in school. I was not academically sound, and I'll probably regret that even to today. But the Lord has a way of blessing us to really be able to be more successful in the things we do now than we did back then. But because I knew I wasn't academically sound, I chose not to go to college. But I decided back in 1977, right out of high school, that I wanted to be in the military. And so I had a 21-year successful military career that I still am extremely proud of. The Army did a great thing for me. It allowed me, of course, to grow up. It brought me discipline. It brought me an opportunity to be able to tour the world and to see some places I probably would have never seen. But it also brought a lot of leadership characteristics and values out of me. So making that decision way back when I was 17 years old to join the military was one of those great moments in my life. In about 1979, I met and married, well, I didn't really meet, but I married my childhood sweetheart, who we know today as First Lady. But Lorraine and I have been together for, 39 years now. Matter of fact, in July 2018, the 18th, we'll be celebrating 39 years of marriage. So about that 1979 July time frame, we had been dating since I was a senior in high school. And I tell folks all of the time, being in the projects, we actually lived like right around the corner from one another. And I used to just kind of sit up in my window and watch her as she would walk by, getting early in the morning, getting ready to catch the bus. And I knew way back then that this was the one for me, that she was the one who I wanted to marry and spend the rest of my life with. And so we've been together for a long time, but she's literally been my best friend. She's literally been the one who's been there with me through thick and through thin. She has been the one, she knows me better than anybody else, and she knows me inside out. And so way back then when we got married, back in 79, Kevin came along, Kevin Jr. came along at a time when we were extremely young, and we didn't know much about parenting, but we moved, I was in the military at Fort Ord, California, and we fell in love. We were in love, fell in love even more, moved out to California, and we lived in a little one-bedroom apartment. I'll probably never forget that, a little city called Marina. And all we had was each other and Kevin, and that was it, a little one-bedroom apartment. But there was such a bond that we had back then, and that's where we kind of actually built our marriage way back in, I guess 1979, 80, back in Marina, California. And so, we kind of continued to grow together, and before you know it, our second child, Jermaine, was born back in 1983, I believe it was. If I'm wrong, Jermaine, you can get me, but so back in about 1982, the early 80s, my wife and I, we actually found ourselves stationed in Hanau, West Germany at the time, and Jermaine would be born. And I tell you, one of the most memorable moments that I had then was I was really secretly hoping for a girl. And so I was blessed to actually be there in the delivery room when Jermaine was born. And I'll never forget that I had the precious privilege of being able to cut the cord. But when he was coming out and he had all this hair on his head, and I just knew this was going to be a girl. But obviously we were not blessed to have the girl, but we were blessed to have him. And so it was one of those memorable moments that I'll never forget. But I love you, man, even though we was looking for a girl. Amen. To be able to have him come forth as a healthy, happy baby boy was one of the most exciting and intriguing for me, because I had never obviously seen anything like that, a child being born. But to be there, to see your son being born and to cut the cord and to bring forth life was an extremely memorable moment for me. So we were blessed. In Germany, those were the early years for us, spending time together, growing together as a young family, and we were just really blessed to be a part of what God was doing in our lives even then.